Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar tonight. Can you guys hear me okay? There's a chat on the left-hand side that goes specifically to me. Nobody else can see it, so if you just write there and say that you can hear me, then that would help. Can you guys hear me? Yes, no? Maybe there's a problem with my audio. Okay, we have people now responding that they can hear me. Okay, great. So I'm going to assume that you guys can hear me. If you realize that you can't, well, I guess you wouldn't know, but eventually you'll go ahead and chat in the box there. So just a quick overview before we start. The chat box on the left is just, it's just chats that go directly to me. Questions that you may have throughout the webinar, questions for afterwards. So feel free to use the chat as we go. Nobody else will see it, so you don't have to worry if you're embarrassed or anything. And then I'll answer the questions as we go, or at the end as well. We'll have a Q&A. So just a quick introduction. My name is Amy Garrity. I'm from San Francisco, California, but relocated here to Lima, Peru. I've been here for almost 9 years, which is crazy. And I am the founder of Grad School Guru and Director of Academic Affairs. So I have been working with students for many years, helping them apply for schools, MBA programs, ones as tough as Harvard and Stanford. At Grad School Guru, not only do we help with applications, but we also prepare for GMAT exams, TOEFL exams, etc., which, as you'll see, are quite important to the admissions process. So the point of this webinar is to basically give you an overall of the things that schools are looking for, and in this case, focusing specifically on Stanford and Harvard, because this is like what I hear when people, come in and we sit down and I say, okay, what's your goal? What do you want to do? I want to go to Harvard. Okay, well, that's a great goal, but unfortunately, it doesn't happen for everyone, right? And some people just simply won't make it. So this webinar is partially for you to realize if you can have the chance to go there, like if you fit the profile, and if not, to understand how admissions works in many of the top B schools around the world, and just to give you an idea of when you're actually completing your applications, what important things that these schools are looking for. They do things a lot differently in the United States than in Peru and around Latin America. They're looking not just for the highest grades, but they're looking for a well-rounded individual, somebody interesting, somebody with passion, and all of that needs to come through your application, okay? So like I said before, for the ones who are just joining, we have a chat on the left-hand side for you to directly ask me any questions as we go along, about 35 minutes or so, and then we'll also have a Q&A at the end. All right, so let's get started. So today, like I said, we are focusing on Harvard and Stanford because those are like the two, dream schools. And please keep in mind that there are tons and tons of amazing MBA programs all around the world. And just because Harvard and Stanford are so well known and, number one in the rankings most of the time, it doesn't mean that they're the best in the world and that the only place you can receive a similar education is there. But we're using them because they are sort of a pillar of MBA success. So just a quick look at the recent rankings. The only ranking we have so far from 2017 is from US News. And indeed, US News has Harvard at number 1 and Stanford at number 2. Now, you can compare this to the 2016 other rankings, The Economist, Bloomberg, Forbes, Financial Times, and you can see that that it varies a bit, right? It's not, Harvard and Stanford are not always number one for everybody. The rankings, yes, they help to look, they help to compare schools, but you don't want to use them as your number one guide in choosing a school, right? So you can see The Economist places, for example, Chicago Booth as number one, and Kellogg as number two, and Harvard and Stanford come in at 4 and 5. So just something to keep in mind, that there are many different schools and they all have something to offer, and all of the schools on this list, they're all in the US, but they are all top schools, and because of that, they're very difficult to get into. So in order to get into one of these top schools, you really have to have a strong profile, and it really has to show through your application. Okay, so something really important, like the first thing you should do, like before you just say, oh, I want to go to Stanford. Why? Because it's Stanford. You really need to figure out if you're a good fit for the school that you're applying to. You wouldn't go study like music at a medical school, right? Now, obviously, MBAs are not that different in terms of their content, but you want to look at their curriculum and make sure that their academic offerings match what your goals are. If you are looking to go into consulting, look at the statistics. Do the students who apply there actually go into consulting afterwards? Maybe most of them go into finance, and that's not your plan. So maybe going to a finance-heavy school isn't the best plan for you. You also want to look about your qualifications. Am I qualified to be there? This is important. And sometimes, unfortunately, I have students who come to me and I have to tell them honestly to their face, listen, it's not going to happen. You can apply to Harvard because you've always wanted to, but to be honest, you're not going to get in. This is because it's so competitive, and you really need to be an elite student in a lot of ways. So the GMAT is really important. You need to have within 35 points of their average. Yes, of course, there's, one crazy, amazing student that they choose from some random place that has a low GMAT, maybe because he or she has an incredible story that they just can't lose them, right? But that's not normal. So you want to make sure that you're not throwing, $200 that it costs to apply, plus whatever other money you pay to get help for the application, plus the time it actually takes to do everything, to a school that will maybe look briefly for 2 minutes through your application and then probably put it in the no pile. So you really want to be realistic. And that's why it's important to apply to a range of schools as well. So yeah, sure, if you want to apply to Harvard and Stanford, great. But also put some middle schools, some middle options, and a couple safeties in there as well to make sure that you do get accepted somewhere. So aside from qualifications and the curriculum, you want to look at recruitment from companies, because the goal of an MBA is to improve your career. Some people want to come back to their country, come back to Peru, work at the same place with a higher job, with a promotion. And there's no problem with that. It's very common. But most people want a new experience, and they're using the MBA as a career change, as a way to boost your career and to work somewhere new and international. In order for that to happen, you need to make sure the place that you want to work for, they actually recruit from these schools. So if you want to work for, JP Morgan, for example, figure out which school, where they recruit most highly from. Probably NYU or another finance-based school. So do your research first. And finally, and people take this sometimes lightly, but this is actually really important, do you fit into the atmosphere? Every school is different. Harvard and Stanford is in the middle of nowhere. Yes, it's close to San Francisco, but it's like an hour away. It's not that close. It's a very suburban, laid-back California campus. People ride their bikes all over. There's lots of clubs, lots of athletics. Harvard is a little more scholarly. It is also in a large campus in Cambridge, but the atmosphere is different. You're in the middle of a city. You're right across from Boston. So these are important things to consider as well. Do you want to be in a big city? Do you want to be sort of on your own on a campus? Do you want to be in London? Do you want to be in the US? Do you want to be maybe in, I don't know, some random city in Canada that maybe nobody's heard of, but it has great possibilities for you to work there after? So all of these things you need to consider when you're choosing which schools to apply to. Okay, so just a quick glance at the latest classes from Harvard and Stanford. So this is the profile for the MBA class of 2018 at Harvard. So the people who started like in September, like just now in September, who will graduate in May of 2018. This is their profile. So you can see there's 934 people enrolled. That's how big the class is. So another thing to consider is if you want a big class or a small class. 11% were admitted they had almost 10,000 applications. 11% is actually kind of high for Stanford, for Harvard, usually it's around 5 to 8%, but this probably means they just had fewer applications. So the number was a bit higher. The percentage of admitted was a bit higher. Now the yield, 90%, that means that of those 11% admitted of the 10,000 applications, 90% of those chose to go to Harvard. That's a huge number. That means that basically all of them decided to go to Harvard. So 10% who were accepted to Harvard didn't go. Why didn't they go? Maybe they didn't have the money, or maybe they got into Stanford or another school that they considered better for them and they went there instead. But a 90% yield is enormous. Now take a look at the educational background of this class. So STEM, right? Science and technology, mathematics, 38%, economics and business, 41%, humanities and social science, 21%. So it's kind of even, like it's kind of a diverse educational background, right? Almost half come from economics and business, but the rest don't. So yeah, probably most of the STEM is engineering, but you also have 21% of humanities and social science, which is something that they look for because they like diversity in their classes. And you don't have to be a business major just to get an MBA. Check out the pre-MBA industry, so where they were working before they went to do their MBA. So it looks like the highest ones we've got here: consulting, 15%, high-tech communications, 15%, venture capital, private equity, 15%. Again, a mixture, right? We have finance at 11%, some energy, consumer products, etc. Pretty diverse. Pretty diverse, but you can see where these people are coming from. And then if you look at the demographics, 43% women, so nearly half, 25% US ethnic minorities, so that means minorities within, so American, like Latinos in America or African Americans in America. Internationals, 35%. That's decently high for a program such as Harvard. So that is what you would be competing with. So those 329 people who are currently in this class, that's the space you are competing for, is that 35%, because you would be applying as international. Unless, of course, we have any Americans listening, in which case then you would not be in that. Average age is 27. Age is an important thing these days. MBAs are getting younger and younger, and I'm noticing my students are waiting longer and longer. So The average age is 27. You should try and stick around the average age. Once you hit 30 and above, it gets trickier. Not that they're not going to accept you, but they're going to wonder why you want to do an MBA this late in life, and you're going to have to prove to them why. They may also ask you to do an executive MBA, which could offer you more networking opportunities since you're, you have 10 years of experience or whatever. But I do have a few students in their early 30s who are applying for full-time MBAs because that's what they want. And yes, they are at a disadvantage, but we're working it so that they can have the same, we're highlighting other parts of their profile to prove to them why they should be admitted, even though they may be above the average age. So they had 68 countries represented, 141 domestic universities, 149 international universities. The GMAT middle 80% is from 690 to 760, with the median being 730. And I believe the average is even higher than that. So basically, you have to get at least 700 on the GMAT if you want to go to Harvard. If you get 680 and you say, oh, I'm close, I'm going to try, I wouldn't recommend it. I would think it would be a waste of money. It's true, like I said, that there are some amazing cases, but I also don't want to lie to you. They consider GMAT to be very important, and other people who are more competitive with more competitive scores will be applying. And unless there's something super amazing in your story that would just completely wash out a mediocre or a low GMAT, then it's going to be very difficult. So think about that when you're studying. If you're studying for the GMAT and you're realizing, I'm getting 600, 650, I just can't get up, I just can't pass the 700 level, then you need to consider other schools. Not saying that you're never going to get to 700, but once you study for about 6 months and it just doesn't happen, sometimes it just doesn't happen. So in that case, you want to look at other options. And I'm not saying, go to like some silly cheap school, but look at, options with lower GMAT averages that are also good schools as well. And then you have the average GPA is 3.67. Now, this is obviously a bit irrelevant in your case, because I'm assuming most of us are Peruvians here, and our GPA is different, and it's out of 20, and it's also weighted differently. Like, it's not just a simple proportion. Different universities have different scales. So don't worry so much about that. But yes, what matters more than the number is your ranking. So your ranking within your school. If you're in the top 10th, if you were in the top 5th, etc. You want to show academic excellence somehow. So they're not asking for you to have a 19 out of 20 average, which is like basically impossible. But if you're in the top 5% of your class, that shows. Or maybe you could be first place in your economics major. Things like that show academic excellence. Okay, so then let's take a look at Stanford. Sorry for the blurriness there. So they had fewer applications than Harvard, 8,000. And it looks like their class, new students, 417. So their class is smaller, right? Their class is smaller, 41% women, kind of similar, 40% international. So they attract a few more international students. This is probably due to the fact that it's located in Silicon Valley, where lots of international students from India and Asia apply here. And then U.S. minority, 29%. So Stanford's a bit more diverse than Harvard. The years of work experience, the range goes from 0 to 13. So that means that some people go directly out of college to do their MBA. It's rare, but it happens. Some schools accept you to do that. You have to obviously be like super amazing to do that, because it's usually good to get a few years of work experience under your belt. And the average here is 4. I don't think Harvard told us what the average was, but with an average age of 27, it's probably about the same. So 3 is a great number. Like once you have 3 years of work experience, it's like, and you want to do an MBA, that's pretty much when you should start getting ready for it. And again, I'm sorry for the blurriness of this, but if you look at the previous industry, again, it's kind of similar. We have 20% with investment management and private equity, venture capital, consulting 18%. So those are the higher ones, similar to Harvard. And then you come from other different backgrounds as well. And this is previously, so, but you even have arts and entertainment, other things that are perhaps maybe you wouldn't associate necessarily with an MBA, but anyone can do an MBA. It's for anyone. It's for any background. It's just what depends on what your goals are. So this gives you an idea of the class that's currently studying at Stanford and the class that's currently studying at Harvard. Knowing the classes, the profiles, helps to let you know if you would fit there, right? We continue. Okay, so with Stanford here, so you can see their GPA is a little higher, 3.73. The majors, again, a little more diverse, more from humanities and social sciences, and fewer from business. And I would reckon that Stanford does that on purpose, because Stanford is known for being very innovative, and they like to take sort of interesting people and see what kind of interesting things they can make. So that to me means that that's sort of a personal decision from Stanford. If you look at Wharton, for example, I'm sure you'll find that finance is the highest, or economics or something like that. Then we have test scores, similar range, except a bit higher even, 690 to 790, and the average is 737, which is extremely high. So you definitely, again, need to cross the 700 level to be able to apply to Stanford. They've also included their TOEFL averages. Like, I think their minimum is 100, but clearly with 100, it wouldn't be enough. You would need to pass, and their average is 112. That's almost perfect. So your English needs to be very excellent to be able to go to these schools. Okay. Again, guys, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat as I go, and I can answer them as I go or at the end, however it goes. So, talking a little bit in general, the things that the schools focus on. First, your university grades. So the courses you took and the grades that you got on them, and your average at the end, which can be in the form of a number or in the form of your percentile or your ranking. That's important. GMAT score is also very important. CV, also incredibly important. Letters of recommendation, your essays, and your interview. I didn't include the TOEFL or the English exam here because that's just a requirement, and if you don't have it, there's simply no way you can go. So that, you're either in or you're out with that. But these are the things that everyone has to do, even American students or native English speakers. They all have to consider these things for their applications as well. So we're going to talk about each one a little bit and just give you a few tips on how to deal with them. So first of all, just going through this again, GMAT. Here are some other averages from other highly ranked schools. I've included a couple European ones like London and INSEAD. INSEAD was ranked number 1, I think, in Financial Times, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, to get to these top schools, like in the top 10 rankings or top 15, you really need to think about 700 and above. And if you even have 690 or 680, then you need to have something super amazing in one of your other things. Because if you look at these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that they're considering, keeping in mind that the interview is really only if you get an interview invitation. These are the things they have to grade you on. If one of them is really low, the others must be stellar in order to compensate for that. So if you didn't do well in university, everything else must be really good. If your GMAT is a little low, 690, 680, everything else must be outstanding. Okay. So again, some average GMAT scores, just sort of as a, reality check. Some people come here and they say, I know I'm going to study, I can do it. They get 600, 650. They've studied the best they can, but they still want to apply to these schools. And really, it's difficult because you will really have to stand out. You can see the range. Yes, people do accept, once in a blue moon, a black swan who's super amazing and has a low GMAT. Yes, it happens. Yes, it could be you. But will it be you? Probably not. So that's why the GMAT, even though it's a pain and it takes a lot of time, it's really important. All right. Another thing that's super important is the resume. I see resumes every day, and most of them are not very good. The resumes that I look at are usually like more of just telling me what you did at work and not highlighting how you made impact at the company. So you need to keep your resume short. In the US, we usually like 1-page resumes. This is sort of changing. We might make the move to be able to do 2 pages. It used to be if it were 2 pages, they would rip the second page and throw it in the garbage. That attitude is changing slightly, but you want to keep it as short and concise as possible. You want to highlight your accomplishments, not just your duties, not just what you did. Essential things that you must include in every resume: your work experience, obviously, your education, that means any education, any diploma, degrees, online courses, etc. Your awards, your publications, if any, and volunteer experience. Volunteer experience seems like weird to put on a resume, but it's actually really important because it shows another layer of who you are, and it shows that you actually care about your community, which is an important value for many of these schools. So I'm just going to kind of go through this quickly about the resume. So the sections, first you should include your personal information, your name, your address, email, and telephone number. That's it. You don't need to say if you're married. You don't need to say how many children you have, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream or whatever. Just the strict information. You don't need to include a picture. Some do, some don't. It's not necessary for American schools. European schools sometimes ask for it, but either way. You want to present the information in reverse chronological order within each section. So your most recent job goes first. Your most recent educational experience goes first. Okay, so the first section is usually the education section. Again, reverse chronological order, starting with your most recent degree. You don't just want to put, okay, I got a bachelor in economics at the Universidad de Lima. You want to add, what else did you do in this 4 or 5 year period of your life? You just went to school. You want to think of everything you did. Were you ever a teaching assistant? Were you in a club? Did you play on the soccer team? All of those things actually go in the education part. They want to see, if you add Harvard Business School to this resume, is it just going to say, oh, I got my MBA? No, they want to see, finance club, leadership series, etc. So you want to make sure that you list those other things as well, any awards that you received, leadership roles, etc. So for example, again, sorry for the blurriness, if you look at the first one, Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College, candidate for Master's in Business Administration. This person has not yet finished. And this is all the things they've done so far. Co-chair of Healthcare Club, Marketing Club, Women in Business, Women's Ice Hockey, Tuck Volunteers, MBA Food Fight Committee, co-chair Mid Students Weekend 2004, Tuck's Admissions Associate, etc. If you look at the next one, Bachelor's in Science and Chemical Engineering with a minor in Engineering Management, graduated magna cum laude, captain, Women's Varsity Volleyball, Society of Women Engineering, resident assistant. So you want to put everything that you did in university that had to do with university. Sometimes it's a little harder here in Peru because universities are not as active as they are in the US. Nevertheless, try to think. I have tons of students who didn't even realize that they had these like extra things until we talked about it and we figured it out. So those things should go in your education section. The experience section is obviously the most important because this is what they figure out what you have done. So you want to make sure that you use, first, obviously, starting with the most recent position first, you want to be concise. Don't just list what you did. Don't just list the things you did. Use verbs to be able to show them like what you did, but what impact it had as well, right? We have what we call the PAR method, problem, action, results, to write about your achievements. It's not a job description per se. It's a look at all the cool stuff I did at this company, right? Don't confuse time-consuming activities with outcomes that had impact. So if every day you had to, I don't know, write a report about something and it took half the day, but then one time you had like a 3-week project that totally changed, you know, one of the something in the company and it's still sustainable to this day, it's way better to write about the second thing than to waste time writing about, you know, the reports that you wrote every day. So pick and choose important things and put them in order using action verbs, right? So if you look at the bottom, you have developed new process to recover unpaid receivables by establishing monthly alerts and better communication with key accounts, achieving a 33% decrease in unpaid amounts, right? So here, something that I did, how I did it, and the impact that it had, right? So this is a strong section of a CV. Okay, I'm just going to skip that one, but because we're a little short on time. At the end, it's important to add some extra stuff too. Like you don't want to just be a business person who's only worked. You want to show your hobbies, your languages, your interests as well. Volunteer service. Make sure that all of that stuff makes it on the resume as well. It really completes the picture of who you are. Okay, so yeah, here again, you can't see very well, but ran the New York Marathon, improved time at London Marathon, traveled Southern Africa, Egypt, France, Peru, and Ecuador, mountain bike down to 100,000 foot Cotopaxi volcano. So, for example, just some interesting things about yourself. Okay, moving on to the letters of recommendation. Now, the letters of recommendation, if possible, should be by your current supervisor. Sometimes we don't tell our current supervisor that we're leaving, so we need to find a former supervisor or some other kind of supervisor to recommend us. That's fine. Another thing people tend to do is they say, oh, my dad is friends with the CEO of the bank that I work at. Can he write my letter of recommendation? Honestly, better letters come from people who know you better. So yes, the CEO, may write, oh yes, John Smith worked at the company for this long and he did a good job or something. But it's not going to have the same passion as your supervisor who's going to say, I hired John when we were in the midst of a financial crisis. He came in, he implemented this project that was super impactful and blah, blah, blah. Those examples those real tangible examples, those are what matter. It's not the ranking of the person. If by chance your current supervisor is an alumnus or an alumna of one of these schools, yes, obviously it helps. But what's more important is what they actually say, not the title that they have. Make sure you meet with the people who are recommending you in order to have them go over your goals and make sure that it's a complete application. So if they're saying, oh yeah, she's going to go into consulting afterwards, but then in your essay you say, I'm going to, start my own business or something, make sure that there's not some sort of weird discrepancy between that. So it's always important to meet with your recommenders before. Okay. Now, essay questions. This is the part that scares everyone the most, I think, and it's probably one of the most important things. A bad essay will immediately get you eliminated. A boring essay will as well. You want to tailor the essay to the school. You want to be personal. You want them to remember you. When they're done with that essay, you want them to go home and remember you as they're eating dinner. Hey, remember that guy who, climbed Mount Everest or something, and now he wants to make a company to have young students do exercise? I don't know. Something that makes you unique. Now, sometimes we feel like I'm not unique. I worked in finance my whole life and I still want to work in finance. There is something unique about you. You just have to find it. And that's what I do with my students, is I help them find their unique voice, what's different, what's interesting about their background, about their story. It's really all about the story. They want to know who you are. They see your accomplishments on your resume. They see your scores. They see how you are academically. The letters of reference also mention that. They want to know, who is this person? And is he or she cool enough to be part of our team? So it's really important to think of a story. Now, for Stanford and Harvard, they like to make life difficult, and they give you these very open-ended questions. Stanford's questions are, what matters most to you and why? And why Stanford? What matters most to you and why? That is an incredibly personal question. Some people would take it literally, or maybe not so literally, and try to say how great at leadership they are, and leadership matters most to them, and this is how I've been a leader throughout my whole life. That would be a very bad approach to this essay. You want to approach it from your heart. It should be something very personal about you. I'm not saying you have to cry about, your father that died and all these horrible things that happened to you. It's not a whining thing either. It's just really a window into your soul, basically. And then, of course, why Stanford? They want to know, have you done your homework? Have you done what we've just talked about before, looking at the profile, and do you fit in with their campus? Do you fit in with their atmosphere? Are you going to contribute to that campus and that atmosphere? And basically, do you want to be there as much as they want you to be there? Harvard even leaves it more open. They say, as we review your application, what would you like us to know as we consider candidacy for the Harvard Business School MBA program? So basically, you can write about whatever you want. What else do they need to know about you? They have your scores. They have your CV. They have everything. What is that one important piece? Maybe you are so obsessed with football and you're so obsessed with the Peruvian soccer team that you've traveled the world to see them, even though they're not very good. But your love for soccer is so important that it's made you travel to all these countries, and you've gone and you've seen all these countries, and for the love of soccer, and soccer reminds you of your family because when you were little you would play with your cousins, and I don't know, something personal, random, but that would complete the story of who you are. And this is uncomfortable for many people because many people think that they want to write about all the great things they did at their work and all the cool things they did at, in university and stuff. which is fine, but it has to be an important part of your story, and that's what's really important. So some tips, again, for these types of essays: tell a story, tell your story. It can't be generic. If it's generic, it goes in the garbage. Explain how this story has shaped your life. So even if it's a story from a childhood story, explain what impact it has. I'll share an example. One of my best friends from high school, she applied to Stanford, and she wrote an anecdote about one time when her goldfish had fallen out of its tank, and her sister had stepped on the goldfish, and her brother was screaming because her sister had just stepped on their goldfish, and she thought that I don't know, he had found his father murdered or something, but really he just stepped on the goldfish. Long story, silly story, but she related it to her family and how her family has shaped her and things like that, and she got accepted. So it doesn't have to be generic. In fact, it shouldn't. It should be unique. It should be weird. It should be interesting. You also want to be sincere. Don't try and write about what they think that they want to hear. Oh, because they like diversity or something like that. Don't try and shape yourself to fit them. Really show them who you are. Consider your community and the people who surround you, whether that's your family, your country, your culture. Especially international students have the opportunity to show something unique to the admissions committee, because of course they get applications from all over the world, but maybe from your grandfather's from a little town in the Andes or something like that, and something about that really shaped the way you live your life, and you can explain that. Express your values. How does this go? How does this relate? Don't repeat your resume. Don't start by, well, I graduated school in 2009, and then I got a job at Banco de Credito, and then after that I worked here, and this and that, I worked there. You really want to show them who you are. And Stanford and Harvard are the two schools who, they are like the kings of these essays. Like, if you have a good essay for them, the other essays are easy, because the other essays are for other schools tend to be more specific, asking about your goals, asking about what do you want to do, things like that. But if you can really find this story and open your soul and find this great story about yourself to express, and it sounds cheesy, but I swear to God it's true, that's what they're looking for. That's really what they're looking for. Okay, and to sum up a little bit, every little bit helps. Do your homework. Show that you're interested in the school. If you can visit the school, that's amazing, because that really shows that you've taken the time to go out there, check it out, not just have a tour, but maybe meet with somebody, try to get context, network with people, alumni, network with them. My most successful students have been the ones who have found, Peruvian alumni, have had lunch with them, picked their brain, really did their homework. So they really knew the soul of the school. And this comes through in your essay, but also in your interview, which hopefully would be the next step. The schools often come visit. Harvard and Stanford are usually not involved in the MBA tour or the Access tour. They usually have their own events. But on their website, you just sign up, and they come at least once a year to Lima. And you have an opportunity to talk with alumni or talk with admission representatives. And really, every little thing like this helps. Sometimes there's online chats. Sometimes there's video sessions. Everything helps towards that. And before we get to questions, and so start thinking of your questions now, because that's the next step. What we can do to help you at Grad School Guru, if you are in this search right now and you're on this journey, and you do feel like you would like some help and guidance, what we can do, specifically because I'm really in charge of this here at Grad School Guru, first of all, we would meet in person to discuss various program options and develop a list of schools that would maximize your admission success rate. So not just, I want to go to Harvard, but looking at other options as well. We'd develop an application strategy to use in your essays to highlight all of your potential, to get out that uniqueness, that story. We also edit all your essays and your personal statements. We review your resume. We make sure it has impact. We advise you on how to make the best out of your letters of recommendation, who to ask, what things to include, and we do mock interviews with you to help you prepare for the interview. And if there's a scholarship process, which some schools have in addition, we also help you with that. So just, down the road, if you're starting this journey and sometimes it's overwhelming because there's so much to think about, that's what we're here to help. So now, in the last 10 minutes, I'd like to answer any questions that you have about the application process, about the essays, the GMAT, the CV, anything at all. I'm all ears. And I'm going to put here my email address for maybe you can't think of a question now, but you'll remember tomorrow. Feel free to email me any questions you may have. Okay, here's a question. How many times is too many times to take the GMAT? Okay, so the schools will know how many times you take the GMAT. However, the GMAT has the opportunity to cancel your score if it's horrible. So if you go and you get 500 and you want to die, you can just cancel it in that moment and nobody ever knew anything. You just wasted $250, but nobody ever knew. So it's some people do send multiple scores. So for example, I have a student now who got 680 and 660 on his GMAT, and he's applying to top school, so he needs 700. So he'd already sent the 680, and the school actually said, "Are you going to retake the GMAT?" He said yes, and so finally he took it again and got 700 and sent that to the school as well. So he ended up sending 3 scores to the school. I don't recommend sending 1 million scores to the school because they're going to be like, "Wow, you're desperate." Take the GMAT 2 times, maybe 3 if necessary. And if you really bomb it and you know you bombed it and you're nowhere near your goal score, you can luckily cancel the score and do it all over again and nobody knows. Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, here's one about interviews. Are interviews in person or on the phone? This depends. Each school has their own sort of, their own way to do the interviews. Some people use alumni who already live where you live, so like Peruvian alumni. Some people do Skype interviews. Some people ask if you'll actually go to the school to do the interview. And each interview is different. Sometimes it's like a nice, easy conversation. Sometimes it's very formal. Sometimes they even give you a case and you have to present the case. So each school is different in that. And each school also has multiple types of interviews. So maybe they'll say, okay, well, you are from Peru, so we'd love for you to come to do a personal one, but if not, we can do a Skype one. So there are options. Okay, here's another question. Do you think they would put more emphasis on the quantitative score of the GMAT than in the verbal, given that we are Peruvians, or is the verbal score as important as the quantitative one? Okay, so in general with the GMAT, people perform better on the quantitative. So it is sort of expected for your quantitative to be high no matter what. Now, what the verbal does is the verbal is the one that will push you over the 700. So if you get 700 something and your quant and your verbal is lower than your quant, that doesn't matter. If you get, 100 percentile in quant and like a 5th percentile in verbal, so it'll give you something like a 500 or something, that's gonna open their eyes, because they're gonna say, okay, obviously they're good at math, but something happened with verbal. If verbal is somehow an issue for them, they have other ways to check your verbal. They have the TOEFL, they have your essays, they have the interview. So yes, in a way, quant is valued more, but because it's less weighted on the GMAT itself, verbal can actually help you get the higher total score. So yes, they take it into consideration, but that actually won't help you if you are aiming for above 700, because you need the verbal high in order to get over 700. Let's see. Approximately how many months does it take to study or enter GMAT? Okay, so this depends on the person, because I have seen a student who has come for like 3 classes. I went over the basics, gave him the book, boom, 720. Okay, well, that is a special person. He knew what he was doing. He, followed all the instructions I gave him. He did all the other extra materials. He understood everything I said. And yeah, I have another student who's been here maybe a year, still taking classes and still having difficulties. So it really depends on the person. On average, I would say that reserve about 5 months studying for the GMAT and taking the test. Because if you take a course, for example, we have a course here that's 3 months. If you take the 3-month course, and then after that, if you find yourself in the 600s or in the high 500s, then you take a month of individual classes, then you study on your own, then you should be able to get your goal by the 5th month. But again, it really depends on every person, because I've seen crazy people and I've seen slower people, and neither are bad. It's just different learning curves for each person. Let's see. 5 months full time? No, obviously while working as well, but dedicating time to doing homework and stuff like that. So yeah, so taking the course after work and on the weekends, spending time doing simulations, practicing your problems, etc. But again, it depends, because I've had students who've done it in 1 month or less. Let's see, what percentage is most likely to finance through scholarship or similar? Okay, so in terms of Harvard and Stanford, very few, because they know that people die to go to Stanford and Harvard and will pay for it. If there's an amazing candidate that they want so badly, but who doesn't have enough money, then yes, they may get some financing. If you are looking for harder financing, for higher financing for an MBA, you have to look at other schools than the top 10, because they are not going to be giving money willingly, because they don't need to. The other schools, who are also great schools and offer great education, do offer scholarships, and up to 50-60% scholarships depending on where you study. So if money is more important and more of an issue for you than going to the top school, then you need to look at other options, and there are other options, which is good. Generally, MBAs, the idea is that the rate of return is high. So the point is that you spend money to make money, but there are schools who are willing to give you quite a discount if you are a top candidate for them. Any other questions? So again, you have my email address here. which you can contact me for anything. If you just have a random question you want to ask, feel free to contact me. If you find yourself in this journey at the moment and you think you want some help, make an appointment with me and we'll talk about it, and I can see how I can help you. If you're interested in GMAT classes, whatever, also, shoot me an email or go to our website. Again, our goal is to get our students into these schools by highlighting the best of them. So I guess if there are no other questions, then we will call it a wrap. I would like to send you the recording of this class. The recording of this class will appear on our website, actually. So we're going to edit it a little bit, and then we're going to upload it to our website. I think there's a link within our website that's videos. So you can go there and see this again. And thanks, guys, for coming out. I'm glad. I hope I could offer some insight on the process. And again, feel free to send me an email or to come visit us at Grad School Guru in San Isidro. And yeah, one last question. Given that the Harvard essay has no word limit, how long do you think it can be as max? I would say between 500 and 700 words. I would not go more than 700. If you had to go more than 700, it must be some super amazing story. Other than that, I would keep it to 700, between 5 and 7. All right, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Hope it was helpful. And again, anything you need, just shoot me an email or come visit us in San Isidro. Okay, guys, have a good, I was going to say weekend, but it's Monday, so have a good week. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.